First topic, which of course is the Sikhs that have been targeted by fake news media outlets and accounts, many of which have been exposed. For this, we have a package that has been reported by our team. Let's take a look at that first before we include guests in the studio.
A report was published by the Center for Information Resilience, which exposes a large-scale operation to propagate Hindu nationalist agenda. A coordinated influence operation on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram is using fake personas acting as influencers within the Sikh community to discredit the push for Sikh independence, label Sikh political interests as extremist, stoke cultural tensions within India and international communities, and promote content in support of the Indian government's position. The report identified a core network of 80 fake accounts that interacts with a much wider network of accounts which appear to be authentic to spread and amplify content generated by the core network. The content produced by the network has endorsements from verified accounts and has breakouts on news and informational sites. While the core fake network maintained its presence on all three platforms through repeated posting and sharing of content produced by the other fake accounts, it gained significant momentum through its activity on Twitter rather than Facebook or Instagram. This report is reminiscent of the EU Disinfo Lab report, which unearthed a 15-year-old operation run by an Indian entity that used hundreds of fake media outlets and the identity of a dead professor to target Pakistan.
And of course, you get an idea what has been going on with India and their coordinated and extensive efforts to malign Pakistan and any other voice that they disagree with. For further discussion on this, of course, we have Mr. Farooq Badafi and Raja Faisal with us in the studios. We will also be joined by our respected guest, Sukhminder Singh Hansra, who's a senior journalist. Before we include you, Mr. Hansra, thank you for joining us in the discussion on the debate. We also want to, of course, consider that this is something, Farooq, that we have seen in the past as well, and it's sad that we can't control our laughter at this because it's something serious, but then it's so ridiculous, and it's been going on for a while now. We've seen such things being exposed in the past. The extent to which these people want to go is
because you said laughter, so I will want him to start because I cannot control my tears.
Oh
my
God!
To me, it's just another ticky pack of EU Disinfo Lab.
Right,
and it was to control whatever was going on in Punjab, number one, and number two, they obviously they had reservations on whatever was going on in Europe. Khalistan movement was at its full swing, so they wanted to use these accounts. I mean, the very funny accounts like Simran Kaur and these sort of, and majority of the no offense, but majority of the names they were using, they were actually female names, just to lure the people in, and the people who were sitting in the sit-ins, they just wanted to drag them out from there.
Does that
and
work?
how funny
is that
it is,
workable strategy?
It was yet another Shrivastava group, very active this time, not against Pakistan, as we know that for 15 consecutive years they've been putting extra money.
15 by the hard right of India. Otherwise, India has been doing it for ages.
Exactly, right.
And honestly, regarding laughter, there's this couplet. पहले आती थी हालत दिल पे हंसी अब किसी बात पे नहीं आती. There was a time when I used to laugh at the state of my heart, but I no longer do that. I tell you why. A country like India, which has 1.3 billion people, its mind seems to have gone all flat.
Right.
I don't understand what is going on. Look, Disinfo Lab is one thing. This operation, this influence operation is another. Then you look at the FinCEN report where so much money was actually sent from India to bad accounts, right?
Right.
And after that, you actually go back to another thing because you were talking about the farm laws. Remember when the protests were going on at the start of this year and the last one, Greta Thunberg actually tweeted something. And her local partner, Disha, her name is Disha Ravi, the poor thing actually just retweeted that tweet, and then she was accused of, a young girl, she was accused of sharing the toolkit, and then she was actually in turn taken to the court and jail. When that happens, I mean, I really, really shrink. And I think something sad has gone on
Right.
with
The
India.
level, the extent to which they're
Yeah,
fought.
exactly. Being afraid of a young activist or actually getting afraid of your own people. And then remember, there's something that is very sad. And that is all these dog whistles they use. For Muslims, there are two things. One, the Muslims are, terrorists, or then they are meat eaters, or then the third thing, that they procreate a lot. And with Sikhs, every time they talk about any Sikh who wants to stand up for his rights, they end up calling him Khalistani.
Or the extremist or terrorist.
And
Everyone's a terrorist.
then with Christians as well, umpteen ways to actually, there are people who literally went into various churches and said, this property is India's and vacate it. Bhai, they are also your people.
Absolutely.
And the fact we need to highlight, yes, I mean, people are talking about that there are revolutionary changes within India that are taking place in terms of revolutionary changes coming into India in terms of factories becoming factories coming to India.
There is another term called evolution. I have stopped believing in it since I have seen India's politics.
But it's true. It's true. Let's also include our respected guest, Mr. Hansra, in the conversation as well. We can, of course, talk about this at length and try to understand the fact that this, of course, is such a desperate and detailed move by India, and these parties are engaging in such an activity based on their hatred and to of course advocate such hatred against minorities, and the reminders, of course, that are being made, the parallels drawn with Modi and Hitler are something that, of course, come into play when we hear such things, because Hitler also went quite at length to work a scenario which is in favor of his own ideologies, his own thoughts, and to, of course, propagate hatred towards a particular community. The same sort of extensive brain space and effort is being taken up by authorities in India right now against minorities which are already suffering at their hands.
So can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, Mr. Hansra, so considering that we have seen such things in the past as well, and the extent that the Indian authorities have gone to in terms of propagating such news and creating fake accounts, does this not point out to a highly desperate need of the regime to prove its worth?
Well, in 2019, when the Srivastava Group's fake 265 websites against Kashmir and Pakistan was surfaced by Europe Disinfo Lab, it did some sort of worry for me that the Indians are up to something. Then, Pegasus spyware they've been using on their own people, on their own politicians. Now they're baffling with it. With this new report, CIA, the Center for Information Resilience, it didn't baffle me. It didn't worry me. As a matter of fact, बुल्ले शाह दी एक गल आ कि बुल्लिया चादर मैली साबण थोड़ा बैठ किनारे धोवांगे दाग नहीं छुटने पापां वाले धोवांगे फिर रोवांगे इन्हां दा ये हाल होया है कि ये minorities दे खिलाफ they do all sort of things to suppress the minorities, but the minorities keep coming back, just like we saw in these farm protests after a year of sitting in New Delhi. The knees couldn't take weight of Modi anymore, and he collapsed. So, using fake names, using young women actresses to create profiles, then bash Khalistani movement. Khalistani movement is above the fray. It's not anymore on this social media platforms anymore. It's actually in the hearts of millions of Sikhs around the world. So they fail to understand that. They fail to comprehend the importance of the event. And I believe this report is putting them far behind in their own endeavors.
Right, Mr. Hansra, another really important impact of such a propaganda campaign is, of course, that a line and a distinction is drawn between different communities and different people. They're being categorized and put under labels of who's a real Sikh, who's a real Hindu, who's a real nationalist, and who are fake Sikhs, who are fake Indians, and who don't feel anything for the country. This sort of distinctions between black and white have an impact of justifying the kind of efforts, the kind of measures that the community can take against a particular community. Even the common people can deem some action or violence against a particular community as legitimate and justified. Does the Indian regime not realize that this kind of spreading of hate actually causes a lot of discord within the community itself?
This is also a worrisome for all of us. We're taking these actions here in Canada because they have targeted Canadians, Sikhs, UK Sikhs, and American Sikhs more than anybody else, and they're calling upon those Sikhs who are actually nationalists. I don't know where they find them. There is no Sikh who believes in a New Delhi administration anymore. We actually never believed them since 1948 when they labeled Sikhs as a criminal tribe. So, they're the one who severed that relationship. Now they sort of, they wish that India Sikhs will become nationalists. We are not nationalists. We are Sikhs, we're Punjabis, and now we are Khalistanis after 1984. So they need to understand that. And the worrisome is that they're calling upon some of those Sikhs to take actions against Khalistanis around the world. So what that action could mean, it could mean some violence, it could mean some bashing among the local Sikhs, and we're trying to call upon the Safety Minister of Canada to stop this interferences in a Canadian soil, because there are so many raw operatives here in Canada, and they have been caught many times by the government, by Indians, by the Sikhs, and has been reported. So, I believe that this is going to call a great deal of vigilance on the part of the Sikhs. Not
right,
only
perhaps,
on
Mr.
Facebook.
Hansra, there may not be a Sikh, as you say, who doesn't understand that, but with the community at large, the people in India and the people in different parts of the world, they can be fooled by such propaganda and such large scale and intensive propaganda. There might be people who, of course, believe the kind of things. If these actions and operations are influencing decision makers and politicians, then of course people are also getting influenced by it. Is there some sort of countermeasures that the Sikh community or other members and supporters of the community are taking with regards to this operation?
Will you allow me to add to
Sure.
this question? Hansra ji, just one question. When Indian media is actually filling in for the role of troll army, why do they need all these influence operations? The entire media is in their control. They can do it everywhere.
Well, this so-called Godi media, that term has become, it's actually their achievement. It's still baffling with the reports that the Modi collapsed before the Kisan movement. So they still haven't recovered properly from it. That's why they never even bothered to report on this very important report by Center for Information Resilience. They don't, because they don't know what to say about this. So when it comes to nationalist Sikhs, there isn't any. There is a fringe element you probably will find. Well, you didn't find anybody in London on 31st when they were voting for Khalistan. That broke their heart. That broke New Delhi's heart, that how many Sikhs could actually line up to stamp on a Khalistan liberation openly while the cameras were on, while the media.
Faisal, considering the fact that there are reports of no evidence surfacing as to the Indian government's involvement in these operations, or that a coordinated single person or single authority is behind that, even though, of course, everybody understands what is going on between the lines. But if we don't have the sort of evidence that perhaps the international community is requiring at large to maybe take a certain step, is there something that people around the world, politicians and communities around the world do to actually undermine the efforts of such large-scale operations? Of course, we talk about fake news, we talk about responsible media and social media organizations playing their part. Does this also not come under that?
Sana, whenever we talk about Hitler, we do talk about Joseph Goebbels, because Joseph Goebbels was someone who actually ran his media at that time. But today's, I mean, the way today's Indian media operates, I mean, throughout the world, everyone recognizes today's majority of the Indian media as Joseph Goebbels for Modi. So I mean, it's something that everyone knows, and we don't need to repeat again and again, that today's Indian media is Joseph Goebbels, playing the role of Joseph Goebbels. I wanted to highlight one more thing, if you allow,
yes.
And that was that the minority of Sikh minority in India has a very good importance, and that's why when the Indian regime the Modi regime saw that Khalistan movement was at its full swing, and of course farmers protest was going on, and then referendum was going on as well in the West. So what they came up with false flag attack as well. If you go back to 10th or 11th of October, the previous month, you would see an attack that took place in Jammu on Sikh regiment, and 5 of the Sikh soldiers, they actually died in that attack. And why it took place? To me, it seems like a perfect false flag attack, because they wanted to hit referendum, because they wanted to hit the movement of Khalistan, because they wanted to hit the farmers movement. They wanted to control it. They controlled it through that way. Right. They reminded people of Punjab, they reminded Sikh people that this is what is going on, and Pakistan is running these shows. Whereas I'm pretty much sure that if we dig into that attack, then it would turn out to be a false flag attack.
Absolutely. We also thank Mr. Sukhminder Singh Hansra, who's a senior journalist, for joining us on the debate and giving his precious comments in the show as well. And of course, speaking of journalists and the situation of democracy in India, we also know in a recent interview, the Indian journalist Rana Ayub also talked about how there is a lot of abuse and of course discrimination that she's been facing. And this of course brings to light the kind of democracy that people are witnessing in India, to which our information minister has also responded and talked about how the policies of vengeance go as far as the journalists are concerned, the journalistic community, and this is what's going on in Modi's India. And this then combined with the state of affairs, with the human rights violations, people in occupied Jammu and Kashmir, Muslim minorities within India, different policies and laws that have been put in place after Modi's regime, even the situation of Christians, and then of course the kind of laws and actions that are being passed by this regime points to the fact that of course there is a disaster-like situation that is going on in India, but despite that they are not facing the kind of consequence that they should be facing.
Here I think if Farokh, you being the most senior amongst us, of course we need to say something about Rana Ayub. I mean, the way she is, standing up there against all of the cases. Please.
Right. Let me first very quickly remind you, I understand that we have to cover 3 segments, so I will be quick, and you can stop me whenever you want. I will stop. But Rana Ayub's whole story is so heart-rending and amazing. She's a very brave person. She has been confronting Narendra Modi since 2002. And as a result, she has been totally marginalized. Everyone keeps on attacking her. She is threatened. And there is this new way of Hindutva, extremists, their technique, that they threaten women with rape. And that has been happening repeatedly, and she has been pointing it out as well. Her courage is really laudable, and the entire world actually praises that. But while you were talking about everything, so many pictures were coming to my mind. Nishan Sahab is hoisted, and Indian media starts calling it Khalistani flag. You don't even know your own culture. True. And then, he was talking, Faisal was talking about false flag, one-liner. I remember Clinton is about to visit India, and all of a sudden 6 are killed in Kashmir. And then Mujahideen are blamed. Every time this happens, and this has become a sad joke, that such things happen, and then India pretends that it is the victim, and usually who gets killed, they are the people, Sikhs and Muslims are their very favorite scapegoats. That has been happening.
That, of course, is the unfortunate state of affairs that we're experiencing. Let's talk about another very unfortunate state of affairs, which of course is the refugee and the migrant crisis that we've been seeing in different parts of the European nations. We discussed this at length yesterday as well, what's going on at the Poland-Belarusian border. But to further deconstruct these politics and to understand how they